Well, hello everyone and welcome to our very exciting episode here on the MIgardener channel. Hopefully you all are going to love this one. This is going to be another complete growing guide in our complete growing guide series. However, this one is on a very fun one to grow, and it's actually coffee. Now you might be wondering, Luke, how in the world are you growing coffee in Michigan? And the answer to that is the fact that coffee, believe it or not, is actually very easy to grow when you actually know the different care tips that it takes to grow. If you just want to grow a coffee plant in your house and you don't really follow this guide, you're going to have a miserable time because it is hands down one of the more in-depth plants you will ever try to grow. Now, with that being said, I have grown this from seed. I have definitely learned the error of my ways several times. So this is, I call this my cat. Because I don't actually have a cat, but this is my cat because it has 9 lives. And we've almost killed this thing probably close to 9 times. But every single time I learn more and more on how to grow it. I've looked up different things from agricultural extensions. I've even talked to a person over email that runs a small coffee farm in Hawaii. So I actually know how to grow this now. It's actually, it takes some knowledge to grow these. And so I'm going to share that knowledge with you to kind of put it all into one video for you to spare you 3 years of learning experience because, believe it or not, I started this from seed 3.5 years ago. Now, that might seem kind of like a drop in the bucket, but the fact of the matter is that when you have a coffee tree, it does not fruit instantly. It actually takes 4 years. So we're half a year, we're about 6 months away from getting our first cups of coffee from this plant. So I'm so excited about it, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about, because it's going to be a long growing guide. So sit down, get a comfy chair, and a drink of water, because you're going to want to follow this growing guide. Just every tip will be beneficial to you, I guarantee it. So the first thing is the pot size. You do not want too large of a pot, and I cannot stress this enough. The coffee actually likes to have its soil cramped. So what we do is we make sure that we only move up a pot size when it's showing signs of the plant being extremely root bound. Because of the fact that it likes to have its roots really wrapped up close, that tells you that too big of a pot is going to hold too much moisture in around the roots. And yes, it is actually a tropical plant. It grows in rainforests. But the thing about rainforests is the fact that there's not a lot of actual soil there for plants to take hold of. The soil quality is great, which we'll get into. However, with the soil quality, they're competing for a lot of other plants, meaning there's a lot of other plant roots in and amongst them. They're not growing just on their own. And so you have a case in which the more crowded it is, the more actually it's going to be like its original environment, which is kind of the premise of this whole episode. Is you want to replicate as much as possible its original environment, and it will do so much better if you do so. So what we did was when we first started our seed, I'm going to post a picture of the coffee bean. You can find, they have to be raw. You can't go to the store and buy the roasted ones. That won't work. You have to buy the raw coffee bean. However, the one step better is to buy raw coffee berries. Because of the fact the bean, when they harvest for seed, if they sell you the seed, you're going to be buying a dry seed. I've tried so many times from dry seed, and I've gotten lots to sprout. However, the germination time from a dry seed, a dry raw seed, compared to a ripe red coffee berry, is about 10 times faster. Believe it or not, 10 times. It took about 2 months for my raw coffee berry dry, or my raw coffee bean to sprout. 2 months. It took about 2 weeks for my coffee berry seed to sprout. And that's because it still has a lot of that moisture. The seed around it is ripe. It still holds a lot of that moisture in, which you don't get in its dry, raw form. So there's a tip if you can find it. Now, the next thing is we started that in a 3-inch little pot. And we kept it in that 3-inch pot for a long time. It will be about 5 to 6 inches before you want to transplant. Then you're going to take that into a 5-inch pot. And that 5-inch pot, you're going to want to leave it in there for about 1.5 years, believe it or not, in that 5-inch pot. You're going to move the 5-inch pot into about a 10-inch pot. And so you're going to double in size, but that's because your plant is going to double in size very quickly. You're going to keep that in that 10-inch pot for about a year. And then from that 10-inch pot is going to go into what we have now, which is a 12-inch pot. And that 12-inch pot is going to basically keep it sustained until it reaches fruiting size. As soon as it starts fruiting, you want to move it into essentially a 5-gallon container. So there you go. That is the kind of the pot progression. It's very important to keep it that way so you do not kill your plant. All right, so now I want to talk about the soil, because the soil could not be more important. What you want to use is a soil with a lot of organic matter, with really great porosity and very good drainage. However, there is one ingredient that you want to add or you will not have success, and that is crushed volcanic rock. You can go online. I'll post a link to where I got mine in the description box below, and you can actually get raw volcanic rock. What you want to do is crush that into a powder. Take a sledgehammer, a hammer, however you want to get it down into a powder, or try to find a powder. They do make volcanic rock powders. I will see if I can find one in the description box below, and I'll post it if I can find it. But basically, you want to get that powder, because what that powder is essentially, it's replicating their environment. They grow very well in Hawaii for one reason, and that is the mineral-rich volcanic rock that degrades and weathers and actually gives them so many minerals that is required for life. Now, if you just try to use a regular bagged soil, it's not going to cut it. Trust me, I've killed three coffee trees before this one because I just kept using a regular potting soil. And that's when I finally talked to my friend, acquaintance over in Hawaii, that says absolutely the reason why you're killing them is because you're just using a regular potting mix. So try that. I tried it. I have amazing results. So that is important. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is nutrients. This coffee tree here is a nutrient hog. They require a regular feeding every 2 months. If you don't feed them every 2 months, you're going to have leaf yellowing and leaf drop, which is one of the most common problems of coffee bean growers and enthusiasts that try to grow them at home. They have to overcome the yellow leaf drop and basically the mottling of leaves. I in fact have some up here, which I can give you an example of. When I was gone for a little while, we forgot to fertilize, and what happens is that the veins will turn yellow and basically the leaf will turn green. What that is an iron deficiency. You have to fertilize with a very high nitrogen fertilizer in combination with a very high nitrogen fertilizer. We use trifecta in this pot here, but trifecta does not have enough nitrogen. Trifecta is great for everything, don't get me wrong. It is great for everything. It has the minerals, which are key. It has the macronutrients, which are so key. And it has the fast release and slow release nutrients, which are key. But because it's geared for more of a vegetable garden scenario, it does not have the iron. Well, it has iron, but not enough of it. And one of the secrets, again, is going back to that lava rock. Lava rock has extremely high amounts of iron because the lava is coming from the Earth's mantle. And the Earth's mantle is made of molten iron. Essentially, it's just molten metal, okay? And so you want to get that iron in there because these plants grow in iron-rich soil. So you want to take something called chelated iron. And chelated iron, I will again post a link to where I get my chelated iron. You can get it in a liquid or a raw form. I prefer a raw form because it does not leach out the bottom as fast if you overwater. Which we'll get into in a second. Watering is important as well. And that's going to prevent all of your yellowing and your mottling of your leaves. They don't actually really care that much about the type of fertilizer as long as you give them something that's high in nitrogen, high in phosphorus, high in potassium, and extremely high in micronutrients. So we use Trifecta Plus, but part of Trifecta Plus's secret is the azomite that we put in there. The azomite is loaded with those rock dust minerals, and those minerals are what is found in that volcanic rock. So you're going to need that in your soil for the plant to do well. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is temperature. I cannot express to you how important temperature is when growing your coffee. We leave them outside here in this kind of corner because the temperatures are much higher in this little microclimate that we've created. You have a brick wall here which absorbs sunlight and then radiates it out during the night. We will leave our coffee tree out in this kind of microclimate in the summer months and into the early fall and obviously late spring. So late spring, all of summer, early fall. Once the nights get below 50 degrees, in it goes. Because coffee obviously grows in tropical climates. it does get cooler. And islands in Hawaii, when you have higher elevations, which is where they grow best, is high elevations, you have temperatures that can swing down into those 50s. So they are going to survive, they're going to do fine. But any lower, and you're going to cause some stress on your plants. Now, the next thing is with sunlight. Sunlight is something that is so important, and if you do it wrong, you're going to kill your coffee plant. I guarantee it. Oftentimes, people want to just go ahead and just give them full sun. They like full sun. Contrary to belief, coffee trees love full sun. However, coffee trees like to be acclimated to that full sun. If they go from kind of a shaded environment, which they're typically growing in it because they grow in kind of an understory. A lot of coffee growers will grow them in between bananas because the bananas provide a canopy for the coffee to grow under, where they don't get that harsh sun. However, here in Michigan, you only get that harsh sun for a few months. And so it's really important, if you want to get a lot of growth, to put it in that full sun, because the thing is that, kind of that semi-shaded understory kind of growing conditions that you're going to get in Hawaii is still much more strong sun than you'll get here in Michigan, because we're in the northern hemisphere, we're way up north. And so when you're on more along the lines of the equator, you're going to have much more direct sun throughout a longer period of time. So most of your year, you're going to have very good direct sun. So again, that's kind of why we put it outside in the full sun. It's going to do well, but like I said, you want to acclimate it. When we bring it inside, it's going to get far less sun, and that's when you kind of have some of those shock periods where it'll drop some leaves. So it will drop some leaves, but the key to getting it not to drop so many and risk killing it is doing it slowly. We'll carry it inside for about 12 hours, then bring it back outside. Then we'll bring it in. Well, actually, to be honest, we actually bring it outside or inside for 8 hours, and then bring it outside for the remainder of the day. Then we'll bring it inside for 10 hours and bring it out for the rest of the day. And then we'll bring it inside for 12 hours, and then we'll bring it out for the rest of the day. So we're shifting from inside to outside to acclimate it to having less sun. And we do the same, we do the reverse when we're bringing it outside for the summertime. We will bring it outside for 8 hours, bring it inside for the remainder. And you start at 8 hours because really you could do it for 4, you could do it for 6 hours, and you can if you want, but it doesn't make that big of a difference. So we start with 8 hours and work up 2-hour increments to we're outside all day long. And that's going to give you the best chance of success without shocking the plant, because if it goes from shady environment into bright sun environment, you're going to have sunburn on the leaves. And sunburn can be found by, I'll post a picture of what sunburned leaves looks like. It basically is just this gray, silvery color on your leaves, and the plant's leaves will never heal from that. They will just die and drop off. And when you're growing coffee, it is so important. Every leaf matters when you're growing coffee, because they grow very slow at first, and they're such a slow grower that if you lose a leaf, that is like 10% of, when you have a small plant, that's like 10% of the plant's energy just going away. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is watering. Watering is so important because of the fact that coffee do grow in a tropical environment where they get rain on a very consistent basis. When you're growing them inside, it is so important not to overwater. It is very easy to say, well, we can just load on the water because they love it. The fact of the matter is that if your pot has drainage holes and you put a water tray underneath, you should never have water standing in the bottom. That's basic rule of thumb. The next thing is you want to give it a drying out period, because in a pot, water does not evaporate like it does if it's just in ground. You have basically walls on every side holding that moisture in, and you just have the top where it can evaporate, and that evaporation happens very slowly. So you want to make sure that you water your tree basically about the amount where it is soaked all the way through the pot, but it's not running out the bottom. And then once it's soaked all the way through the pot and not running out the bottom, you want to let it dry for just a couple days where it can have a drying out period. Because if the plant does not dry out, it's going to have what we call wet feet, and it will cause the plant to have root rot, which is where you'll again start to see the yellowing of leaves and the dropping of leaves, which is again going to kill your plant if you keep it for a prolonged period of time. Now, the very last thing that I want to talk about, which we kind of talked about with the microclimate here, is the temperatures that it prefers. Now, we did touch on how low it can withstand. We're going to talk about how high as well. When you're talking about the temperature swings that you're going to have, you don't want it to go any less than 50, but you also don't want it to go any more than 105. So if you're going to have temperatures that are above 105, you want to pull it inside, because of the fact that the high humidity in the tropics actually acts as a temperature buffer. It won't go higher than around 100 degrees. On very rare occasions, it'll go above that. But the temperature, you want it to be lower than 100 degrees, no more than 105. We never leave our coffee tree out in any more than 95, actually. We'll pull it in if it's any more than 95, because you'll find that the leaves will burn very easily in that type of temperature. So those are your temperature variances. So no less than 50, no more than 105. I'd prefer if you left it out in no more than 95. But I know sometimes in climates like Texas and California and stuff like that, it can happen where it can swing up really fast. Just keep an eye on it though. Now, the very last thing that I want to talk about is pruning and other care tips. So the fact of the matter is, you should not have to prune your coffee tree. We get asked all the time how we prune it, how we keep it nice and bushy. It just doesn't happen. And it also depends on the type of coffee tree you're growing. If you're growing a cultivated variety of coffee, which most seed sellers and most places where you're going to get the raw coffee berries, they won't have a wild type of coffee which will grow up to 25 to 30 feet tall. You're going to have a coffee tree that's going to be more of a bush. It's actually going to grow around no more than 10 feet tall, and it's going to really actually bush more than it grows up. And that's nice because of the fact that it makes it a great house plant. You'll have a case in which it will hit a certain height and it will actually just push out side shoots. Here, this has been this tall for about 2 years now. It grew very fast, and then once it hit this height, it pretty much just sends out side shoots down around the bottom, and it just forms the bush. The very last thing that I wanted to talk about, that I just thought about, was some signs that you can look at of nutrient deficiency. You'll notice that there are there are certain leaf deforming features that you'll see kind of popping up here and there. Don't panic, but just know that might be a sign that one of two things could be happening. It could be too root bound, or it could need fertilizer, or it might need both. So you just want to make sure that you watch for those signs, and I'll show you some examples of that where you can kind of see the plant not really putting out full leaves. Another thing that you want to look for in kind of plant care, in the kind of plant care topic, is looking for the fact that the leaves should be getting bigger, not smaller. If your leaves are getting smaller and progressively smaller and smaller and smaller, it's going to be a sign that your plant is slowing in growth, and you want to speed that back up again. Now, new leaves obviously are small. I'm talking about fully mature leaves. If the leaf is fully mature and you notice that the leaf is not growing any, and it's smaller than the one behind it, you want to make sure that you're fertilizing, because the leaves should always be getting bigger as the plant matures. And obviously your leaves will be smaller when the plant is young than it will be when it's bigger. And it's going to keep some of those young, small leaves. I'm only talking about the vast majority of leaves. So on new branches that are coming out on new growth, just keep in mind that the leaves generally should be larger than some of those older, smaller leaves, because the plant is gaining energy, and you should always be ramping up, because if your plant is ever going to fruit, it needs to be ramping up energy, not kind of stalling and declining in growth. Okay, and one more thing that I forgot before I leave you is some signs to think about when fertilizing. So we talked about the leaf deforming, the different leaf deformations that you can find. That typically means you need a fertilizing somewhat soon. But another thing that I thought I would mention that I'll go a little more in depth in is the different nutrients that might be missing. Like we talked about with the modeling of the leaves, that is an iron deficiency. Okay, the iron deficiency will happen when you have the yellow veins and the green exterior around the flesh of the leaf. Then you have a case in which the leaf will just turn yellow. That's generally a nitrogen deficiency. If your plant is slowing in growth, you want to make sure you give it a magnesium supplement, because magnesium will boost that growth. Then you also want to follow up with nitrogen because it will boost that growth, and you need to follow up with nitrogen. So if your plant is slowing in growth, nitrogen and magnesium will get it back up, and you should start to see those larger leaves again. The very last thing is if you're finding that the leaves are turning kind of brown on the tips, you want to make sure that your humidity is high enough. That was something that I didn't talk about, but it's something that can be seen in the leaves as a sign. If you start to get lower humidity, you'll find that the very point of the leaf will start to turn brown. That's generally because the humidity will affect the very tip of the leaf and the edges of the leaf before it affects the center of the leaf. And so all you have to do by doing that is increasing the humidity, either get a humidifier, or you can take a water bottle and spritz the plant down with warm water. Warm, not hot, not cold, but warm water, right around 85 degrees. And that's going to make sure that it increases the humidity around this plant. And you want to do that daily if you're starting to see your leaves start to turn brown. That's very important in the winter months because you do have less humidity in the winter months. So there you go. That is all that I know about how to grow coffee. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Hopefully you all learned something new. If you have any more comments or questions, though, post them in the comments box below. I really do value your feedback. If you think I missed something, or if there was something that I missed, let me know in the comments box below, and I would love to make an add-on video because I think that more people should be growing plants like this. It's just a fun plant to grow. It's a challenging plant to grow, and for garden enthusiasts like myself, there's nothing more rewarding than actually getting a cup of coffee from the coffee that you grew from seed. And you can buy the starts, but they just don't end up doing that well, which is another thing that I forgot. Oh my goodness. Starting from seed or starting from starts. You want to always start from seed because of the fact that they typically grow the starts in a tropical environment like Florida or Hawaii or things like that and ship them to you. There's always going to be stress in transit as well as just taking out of the box because the two environments are so vastly different. And so if you start from seed, it's going to grow in your environment the entire time from the moment it emerges from that seed. And that, I think, is just the most, it's not only the most rewarding experience to grow from seed, it's easily the most hands-free way of starting, because if you start from a start, you're constantly going to be putting in effort, and you'll probably kill more than you would like. Because I started from starts, and many of the coffee trees that I killed probably, I think, 4 or maybe 5 coffee trees because I thought it was just something I was doing. It's because I was starting from a start, and I was doing pretty much everything right. It's just, yeah. So when you look at how many coffee trees I've killed in order to get to this one, don't be surprised if it will happen to you. It happens to the best of us, but hopefully this video has alleviated some of those risks of you killing your plant. And just know that if you're killing your plant, you should be learning something from it, and it'll make you a better gardener. So don't worry. Just get back up, try it again, and there you go. So hopefully you all enjoyed, hopefully you learned something new, and hopefully you all are growing big or going home. This is Luke from the MIgardener channel, and I'll talk to you all later. See ya. Bye.